typo. Okay, welcome to the November 6th Select Board meeting. This meeting is being recorded. If you could please all join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next we'll have public comment. Public comment will go for, it's still being recorded. Public comment, please give your name and your address, and we need to keep it to 3 minutes, so I'll waive if you're going 3 minutes. Is anybody here for public comment? Sir?
My name is George Chasen, Precinct 3, 116 Paradise Road. I'm here to address the board on the VFW post. I was rather dismayed tonight to go onto Facebook and find that the post is now being closed and done away with. This seems to be a flip-flop that this town loves. I had two uncles on my mother's side who participated in World War I. Two uncles of my father's family were in World War II, one of whom went on to serve in Korea and in Vietnam. My brother John and I both served in Vietnam. And I feel that it's a disgrace to them to the way the town is treating the VFW. I really am upset with the way that the town has offered nothing really in the way of compensation or recompense for the fact that we built the post ourselves on town land, and then because of agreements with the town about the property underneath it, we're not allowed to own the land or the building. And it just seems to me that this close to Veterans Day, next Monday, Veterans Day, we're now going to close the post, do away with it, another decision made to get rid of us. And it seems like that's all this town wants, is to get rid of the veterans. Good luck when we're all gone.
Thank you, Mr. Jason. Maura?
Good evening, Maura Lau, 15 Outlook Road, Precinct 3. I guess I'll just start real quick with just a couple of events coming up that I just wanted to make sure get well documented and well publicized and in support. So the Master Plan Committee will be hosting an open evening for community members to join. It will be here at the high school. It's on November 14th from 6:30 to 8 p.m. We look forward to the community coming out and having their voices heard and being part of the process. So that's the one of two public evenings for that. And then also on the same evening, so hopefully we're hoping you can dip into both events. Matt Bocci is an opioid awareness speaker that came to the high school last May. It collided with town meeting night, unfortunately. So we didn't probably get as much of a robust engagement as we may have otherwise. So hopefully, people can kind of pop in there and also, hear his important message. It's an important message for whether you have students or not. So many people are dealing with addiction, have had it in their family, or are just, just need to be aware, right? So we can kind of, see the signs and be supportive of each other in our community. So I do want to address, sorry, I'm rusty at this. Okay, I would like to address the topic of Hadley and RAP in our community need for togetherness. I'd like to just remember and kind of remind the board about the topic, to be mindful when making this really important decision and signing on the dotted line, that you are mindful not to give over everything to the developers. That the best interest of our town and our community members is really fully considered. Obviously, finances have an important role, but there is more to consider than just that. So if we could also keep in mind its proximity to Linscott Park, and that Linscott Park will be enhanced, not damaged by the construction, please. That would be significant. You'd also want to keep in mind that with Blaney School, the direction I realize for Reddington, I think if it hasn't changed, I know it's going to. It might be thoughtful to kind of send the trucks around to the other parts of the community, so just that one little area isn't just so heavily burdened by that. Something down the road to consider. Finally, I want to make sure that the community space is considered in there, and that is actually going to happen, and it's not going to be an afterthought and dismissed, as was if I had a redo button. I think we'd all love a redo button right now, but if I had a redo button back, 2 Mays ago, I would have known a couple of different things. I would have known to indefinitely postpone that warrant. And I would, I'm going to say one more sentence. And then I would also have probably known to do a recall the night following.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Schultz?
Jackson Schultz, 23 Hampden Street, Chair of the Harbor and Waterfront Advisory Committee. I'm here to speak tonight about transparency and process. I know that the board is looking at appointing 5 members to the Harbor Advisory Committee meeting, and I have a list here of 23 applicants that applied to be on the Harbor Advisory Committee. I'd like to know what the vetting process was to narrow it down to 3 new members, when I have a list of 23 here that want to be on the committee. The liaison who's supposed to put together the list of new appointments was supposed to, if I understand, work in conjunction with the chair of the committee, who is me. We have actually never met. And I don't, if I saw you at Stop and Shop, I wouldn't even recognize you. So I think what I'd like to do is propose possibly tabling this tonight till we have a chance to sit down and look at the applicants and process what the process was for vetting those people. Also, the people who are not reappointed, I think they deserve to understand why they were not reappointed. There should have been a conversation with them as well as to what the motivation was for not reappointing 2 members who have been on the committee for a long period of time, and they really were invaluable. One person used to work for the EPA. So when we're dealing with the eelgrass issue, he's a really important person to have on the committee. So I think that's it. So thank you very much. I'm going to go home and log on from home.
Okay, we'll be here. Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Is there anyone else here for public comment? Okay. Next, we are going to postpone the town administrator's report at this time, and we're going to go straight into capital improvement plan with our town treasurer, Patrick Luddy. Mr. Luddy?
Okay, can you all see that? Mm-hmm. Yep. All right, so I'm going to do a brief update on the capital process. I'm going to talk about some projects that have been approved by town meeting in the last couple of years and where they stand. And then I'm going to talk about the process for updating the plan for a town meeting in May. To recap some recently completed projects, the Swampscott Elementary School is up and running. We have students in the building, which is excellent. That's the largest undertaking the town has ever had for a project, so that's great. Phase 1 of interactive whiteboard replacements at the schools is complete. Acquisition of mobile LED trailer for the rec department is complete. I know some of you probably have been out there and seen those movie screenings. They're very popular. So that was great to see come out of the capital plan. We've done control room upgrades at the police department, and we've installed a sprinkler system at the fire department. Ongoing projects we have in place are water main replacement program. That's appropriated nearly every year. That's ongoing at various locations throughout town. We have ongoing seawall repair work, sprinkler system repairs at the high school, auditorium upgrades that we've been talking about in prior meetings a lot. That's ongoing, and upgrades to the middle school STEM lab. And on the next slide here, we have projects that have been approved but haven't officially started. Construction phase, these are either in planning or design phase or procurement phase. So those are, I tried to list the biggest ones outstanding so that they're in front of you to keep in mind. Moving forward to update the capital plan ahead of town meeting in May. I've been working with the capital improvement committee. Yep.
If I have a question, should I wait till he's done, or?
Whatever you'd like.
Whatever you want to do.
Can you go back just one slide?
Yep.
Fisherman's Beach IDDE in procurement phase?
Yeah, that's my understanding.
Aren't we doing that now? We're doing that.
Okay,
right?
so
Yeah, it's my fault. I never
Okay.
got around to
it
it.
might just be a
Okay.
timing thing with
Okay.
the
I
slides.
didn't know if it was because it was IDDE and the thing we're doing is technically something different, but I just wanted
Yeah.
to make sure.
My apologies, Patrick.
No.
Okay.
I owed him an
All right,
email.
thank you
and
for the
I-
clarification.
No, didn't mean to,
Contract has been signed.
yeah.
I have a question on that slide too. So the things that are in the planning and design phases, can you give any additional information about any of those?
If you have questions about specific projects and where they're at in the design phase, I can take those from you and go back to the department heads that are managing the projects.
Sure, if maybe we could just get like sort of a percentage of completion through the design, or when we expect the design to
Sure.
come returned to us?
Sure. Yep, I can get that.
Just so we know
for your
if
next
it's
meeting.
this year, next year, sort of.
Is that on the capital project, the capital report that you sent, percentage completed?
Projects that have construction in progress and there's purchase orders issued or spending
Right,
that's occurred, that'll show up on the report. But if we have things that are in design phase and you want to know where they're at with design, that'd be a more pointed question. I'd have to go to the person working with the design team.
Yeah,
But I can get that
thank you.
for you.
and if you could keep that as a rolling document, just to send out. when
Yeah.
you're- That'd be great.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Okay. We'll do that.
But on the Clark School renovation.
Yep.
Can you find out, we're not, just find out what direction we're going in there?
Yes, yeah, obviously there've been some
Little
conversations,
changes,
so
okay.
I'll get updated information on that.
And then on the EV charging stations, is there anybody that can comment on those at the new school? As far as, or maybe
Is
Max?
that Max
Yeah,
way back there?
because we're getting I have received a couple calls that they're not working.
Yeah, I can comment on them. So the EV charging stations at the new school were installed as part of the construction, not through a separate capital line. There have been some challenges with the activation of them. We're still working with the electricians who installed them to get them activated. We anticipate it would be quite soon, but there have been some issues, so.
Okay, great. Okay.
You wanted actually working EV charging stations, or?
Well, apparently they appear on some of the Tesla maps that they are active, so people have been accessing them.
They're not,
driving there and
Yeah,
yeah,
Making it bad.
I know, but I was just saying.
okay,
Okay.
carry on.
Looking forward to updating the plan for town meeting in May. I've been working with the capital improvement committee. They've met a few times this fiscal year. 2 new members were appointed to the committee this year, so we took a little time to get them up to speed. The request forms were approved at their meeting on October 29th, and those were distributed to departments and the Select Board, the Finance Committee yesterday. So the memo went out and the link for the electronic form. There were some updates to the form, but largely the same format as last year. And once we get data back at the end of the month, we're going to work on review with the town administration team and vetting what department heads have submitted. And then with that information, we'll be able to update the debt management plan and reserve analysis so that when we get to the point that Finance Committee is looking at these projects or requests, they have an idea of what our resources are available.
So what is your closing date for,
That's on another slide.
okay. And then also, the schools are under the same calendar?
The same information I sent out yesterday went to the schools. They're on the same calendar. Yep.
Okay.
Okay, these are some projects that were included in the last iteration of the capital plan that was published in the town meeting warrant in May. So these are just some of the bigger ones that we were anticipating last year to be doing in FY26. So we'll be looking at these closely to update or remove or push out projects, reprioritize, once we get all the information back at the end of the month to see how things have changed since May. If there are any questions, let me know.
No, but just get back a couple slides. What you showed us there, Patrick, that's not a comprehensive, that stuff that was in design or?
That's just cherry picked. There is a whole report. I think it was sent out to you
Yeah.
recently.
I'm saying just for people that are watching, like.
Yeah, it's
that
not
was
all
a snap.
inclusive. I'm just trying to highlight some of the bigger projects for you.
Patrick, on this slide, the high school auditorium upgrades, are some of them, is that dollar amount now offset at all by the grants? Or is that in addition to?
So that's still in flux. There's kind of 3 different phases to that project. We've been trying to phase that project. So there is a significant request out there that addresses more work that hasn't already been approved, so that'll come up.
How did we leave that? Joe, maybe you could help out. How did we leave that? We talked about it.
I think we have to swing back around after we
Okay.
have more time from National Grid.
It wasn't December.
The irony that
originally,
Joe
and-
can't get a microphone right now.
I'm just trying,
Where we left the National Grid grant.
The high school auditorium upgrades, Joe.
Oh, so the National Grid, they had to reevaluate because of some internal process, and then they came back with another offer, which was originally at $240,000. When they reevaluated the project, it came to $199,000. So they're still ready to give us $199,000, but they extended the timeline for us, so we don't have to have the project finished till the end of March. So Max and I are preparing a warrant article for the special town meeting to get that approved. So it cuts the project in half by almost 50% still. And because they kind of took a little bit off, they gave us some more time to get it done.
Okay. So that is part of this, oh no, that would be fiscal year 20.
I don't know.
I don't know. Is
Yeah,
it?
that's what was plugged in the plan
Okay.
for FY26 at annual town meeting.
Yep.
Obviously, since then, everything that you just said has happened, so I would
Sure, he
defer to
can
Joe
find a way
on
to
that.
spend all the money if we gave it to him though.
Right. Any other questions on this slide?
wait, I do have one question on the cemetery surplus fill removal. Gina, are we still looking, we punched this out.
Yeah, that number's probably going to be cut in half to wrap that up.
Okay, all right. And then will that finish it up, or?
We'll finish it up.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's all information too we'll get with department heads this month. We'll say this is what was in the plan for the coming year. Now, where are we?
Yep.
Before we bring it to town meeting for vote.
Okay,
So
thank
stuff
you.
like what we're bringing up now is what we're gonna go through. Okay, next slide. This is just a highlight of some policy decisions and financial considerations that the Finance Committee and the Select Board will probably consider once CIC does their review. This would be programming board and committee priorities into the capital plan, recommendations to town meeting, reviewing grant opportunities, looking at borrowing versus expending current resources to pay for some of these projects as the cost of borrowing has changed. I want to highlight our credit rating was reaffirmed in October at AAA, so that is good. The rating criteria, as I mentioned last time I was before you for the note approval, has changed, so they're going to be weighing things differently as they evaluate municipalities' credit going forward. So that's just something we're going to keep in mind as we make decisions like what we do with the capital plan.
So what is it, they're weighing in our debt?
Yeah, they're weighing debt
debt
and
ratios?
OPEB liabilities heavier, and they're giving us less credit for the strong economy that we benefit from being in the Metro Boston area. So that's just it's a change, but it doesn't mean we have, concern at this point. We just need to use that to inform our behavior going forward. And also, every year, we look at deferring projects where appropriate and financially necessary, or accelerating projects when it's advantageous and financially prudent. So that's just another part of the exercise we're going to do. And lastly, I'll just recap the timeline. This is included in the budget timeline that Amy sent out last month. But these are all the key dates for the capital plan. Obviously, I said this month we're gathering data, and then we're going to take a week or two to review as a team internally, and then we will move on to Capital Improvement Committee review in December, and from there we'll go to Finance Committee in January, and obviously we'll bring that to the Select Board as well to get that input before everything is finalized for town meeting. So those are just the dates that I pulled out of that master budget timeline for you. And that's all I have.
Do you have some more questions? Katie, okay? Any questions?
Thank you.
Okay, so the only question I have is, Joe and Max, can you just have a conversation with Patrick tomorrow about what your needs are, just to see what we can do to take care of that possibility of getting that grant? All right, so moving on, we will now have a discussion about the signage and changing parking restrictions on Nason Road and Orchard Road. Max Casper.
So I don't think we're actually going to be looking for a vote tonight. There have been some changing situations at the intersection of Orchard Road and Nason Road. All in all, the rollout with the opening of the new school has been very good. The traffic flows have been difficult in some particular locations, but with drastic sort of changes in the one-way flow and different traffic maneuvers through the UU and out into Forest Ave, and the new school being so close to the middle school, to not have chaos is actually a success. And it's really gotten better and better since the first day of school. There was some real hiccups the first day of school that were operational. What we were going to talk about tonight is the intersection of Nason and Orchard Road. The first couple weeks of school, we were having some real congestion at that intersection. The engineers did some analysis at the intersection, brought forward some recommendations to improve that intersection. What's interesting is the intersection has morphed a little bit on its own and a little bit as a result of the parking changes on Nason Road that made it resident only. Those parking changes weren't intended to impact the intersection, but in fact they did, because there's so few cars on Nason Road that it's created this makeshift lane that the parents are backing up on, and has led to less congestion at the intersection. So the recommendations that are in your packet at this point are actually a little bit outdated, and we're going to be taking a closer look. And there's no emergent situation there. The intersection day in and day out is safe and not congested, and and cars are not getting backed up that aren't waiting to get into the school traffic. There still may be some tweaks we can make to make sure the flows are consistent day in and day out, and like one parked car that's a resident parked car doesn't mess things up. But we're going to continue to look at that. And additionally, we are going to have a follow-up, probably final neighborhood meeting. We had a number of those over the course of the summer and leading up to the opening of the new school, and the intention was always to have another one once things were open and we saw how things were going. So we had an internal meeting this week with the PD, with Gino and myself, and we talked about the content of that, what that might look like, and it's not confirmed, but right now we're looking at Monday, November 18th. We're considering having it at the police department, just because there's a lot of activity here at the high school that day, but that's not set in stone. So if we feel like the PD room might not work for any reason, depending on what we're kind of anticipating for how many people are going to show up, we can look at that. But that's where we are right now. That's a quick update, and we'll talk more about that intersection at that meeting. And then I think there's a probability that there will be something brought forth eventually, probably pretty minor parking changes at that intersection just to allow for the traffic flow.
Okay, great. So when we'll just make decisions, you'll make recommendations following that meeting, not prior to, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions?
I do.
Katie?
Max, has there been any conversation about the intersection coming out of the UU?
At Forest and Laurel?
Yeah.
Yeah, we actually, yes, there has been.
Hear about that.
So there was 2 trees have been taken down at that intersection. We did 3 ADA pedestrian ramps. They were late. They were sort of the last ones that were done. So if you actually look at that intersection today versus 2 weeks before school started, it's drastically different. The sidewalks are better. Gino and the DPW did a lot of sidewalk work up and down Laurel, both sides of Forest. Some of that intersection, lagged a little bit into the school year, but it actually has really come together quite nicely just recently. And I don't know if you're referring to the traffic flows there, but we did notice very recently that it was a little bit of an awkward situation with cars coming out of the UU into Forest Ave and Laurel, and it seemed like it should be a stop. And we
Went up today.
added a stop sign there at the end of the UU to make that safer.
Is it before the crosswalk or after?
Good. Give you that answer tomorrow.
Okay, that'd be great.
Yep.
Yeah, I think.
It needs to be before, so I'm
Yes,
hoping.
having taken that route often, the pedestrians make that traffic worse, right? Because there's both parents crossing to the opposite side of the street from the, onto Forest, and then crossing the street from Laurel to the opposite side of Forest, right? So we're walking up both sides of the street. And the crossing guard is doing her darndest to keep traffic moving, but also keeping everybody crossing safely. So I just want to make sure, if we added a stop sign, fantastic, just making sure that it's in front, behind the crosswalk, so that the crossing guard has a clear view of those crossing, and that we're not crossing behind a car to get to the other side of Forest there.
Great.
So in case anybody's going to have a question on what's happening with Humphrey and Atlantic, I know we're waiting to see what the outcome is on a grant that Marzi had applied for. So we'll be able to update that as we go a little bit further.
Yeah, I think we could talk to that at the neighborhood meeting as well. Marzi and I have been having a lot of conversations about that, and we're definitely heading in a good direction. It's with federal funded grants, especially with these DOT grants, the timelines are pretty lengthy, but we have to get into the process to even fully understand the timeline.
Which we're in the process now, right? Yep.
Yeah.
We're just waiting on an answer.
That's there's multiple grants in play, just to be clear, but there's one grant that she has applied for that we are waiting on, and there's one that just opened up like last week that is actually the larger tips program
Right.
that we will be entering into, yes.
Max, is there also any consideration to wait until snow falls to make a recommendation about traffic patterns? Only because we have been blessed with the weather.
Doesn't snow anymore.
And so many families are still walking and biking to school that obviously, once the snow falls, we'll see, I think, a pretty significant change in the amount of cars that are coming in and out of the pickup line.
I think the way to think of it is no decision we make or recommendation we make is the final, and that it's fluid. So I don't think we necessarily need to wait to make what is not necessarily like a significant change, just with the understanding that we may need additional changes or you know, to modify some things that we've done in the past. But we have the ability to do that. So I think it's definitely a valid point. And once we have more weather, we haven't even had much rain like with the school open, which is unbelievable. But rainy and snowy days are the hardest days for drop off and pick up and the traffic. So we do have to see what those days look like ultimately, yes.
Okay, any other questions? All right, well, it's, moving along here, we'll go to the Clark School Memorandum of Understanding. And just want to know,
It's not in our packet.
Separate sheet.
Diane, where is that
Oh,
sheet?
You handed it out on Monday.
Do you have yours?
Yeah, I have mine.
All right, Max, do you have yours?
I have it electronically.
Okay, so do you want to go over that memorandum, Max?
Sure. So I think a little context is necessary to, understand this document, and it was referenced earlier about the Clark School capital projects, and there were sort of plans in place for a while for the Clark building to be continually used by the school district as preschool and administration or some form of that or mix of that or one or the other. And as things have developed, as the new school is opened, as the planning is happening for the sort of future of the school district and the school buildings, internally at the school department, the decision was made that in the short term, 1 to 3 years, there's essentially no planned use of the Clark School building by the school district. And that is across departments within the school district. We've met multiple times and talked it out, and we've really all kind of come to that it's not an efficient and necessary use for us right now. It very likely will be in the future when at some point, a middle school project starts to crystallize, and we will need swing space. That's in the future, and the details aren't there. But as we know with the new school, space becomes at an absolute premium when you are doing a school project in a small town especially. So we think it's really important that asset sort of stays there as a chip for the school district and for the town. But what that means in the short term is it creates opportunity. The worst thing you can really have is just an empty building that sits and has expenses. We've seen this with other buildings in this town in the past. So through some different discussions, there's been an idea about having some limited town use of the building in the short term. So this memorandum is anticipating that. I think you should think of this one as like a pilot. It's just to kind of get through this fiscal year to understand the obligations of the school district and the town with the anticipated recreation uses at the Clark School for this year, and hopefully senior center uses and community uses. I think it's in many ways it's like a blank slate, and we get to kind of fill it in, and there's a lot of opportunity there. It's a big building.
David?
Yeah, just a quick question. So I'm just reading off of the MOU. Number 4 talks about utilities, maintenance, repair, and replacement. Town will pay for all utility costs associated with the main Clark School building and surrounding grounds. So any idea of, I'm sure you know, what the utility costs and basic maintenance would be? I mean, what exactly are we signing up for? And what
Yeah.
costs are we incurring and shifting from school to the?
So, we do know what it costs to operate Clark as a school building, right? We have historic data on that.
Yep.
And then we anticipated in the school district on what it would cost to operate Clark as a vacant building for a year. We really don't know what it will cost to operate Clark as a semi-occupied building. Heat, especially, a steam system, we don't have like total control. We have the ability to be more efficient, but we don't have the ability to really tune it in. We're working on that now. I can tell you that the school department budgeted around $30,000 for the Clark School building this year. So it's definitely north of that for all the expenses that we were anticipating at Clark.
Yep.
But this agreement sort of splits it up and keeps some obligations with the school district, keeps some obligations with the town, and I think this is it's a big part of the reason why doing this on a short-term basis and getting through this year, I think is a really good idea, because then we can see real data and real numbers on what it looks like over the course of the next 8 months. And then, to then know what the following years look like.
Understood. And just a follow-up to that is, does the recreation department and the senior center, do they have programming that can be plugged and played in this facility, in this building, to help offset some of these?
They definitely have
these
some
costs?
programming that they're like ready to go. Like there will be basketball programs in December for the recreation, and then meeting with Jackie and Danielle, you can just see their minds going and all the possibilities of moving programs from Reach Arts and new potential programs. So I don't want to speak for them, but I definitely know that it's a developing thing.
No, certainly a lot of opportunity. I just want to make sure that we give them the opportunity to talk to this and to make sure that they are able to cover these costs, because it does seem that we're taking this from the school and burdening, potentially burdening, and I would hate to bust somebody's budget because we're doing this with good intentions.
So I had a conversation with Sean during this process, and we have funding in the revolving account that would cover the $30,000 up front.
Okay, so funding in the revolving account
We have-
for the rec revolving account?
Yes, for recreation.
Okay, and what about the senior center
Activities.
activities?
We don't have anything, we just talked about the revolving account, so I think, and if the revolving account could cover utilities right off the bat, and it can, we can-
I mean, again, I would just hate to burden the recreation department with, and just use their revolving account.
yeah,
with-
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, that.
My conversation with Sean was there was absolutely no burden whatsoever. That was my conversation with him. So I don't, we can go back and double check that, but after looking at that recreation account and looking at what the potential is for being able to run activities there over the next 6 months, there didn't seem to be any
Okay, yeah, no.
financial burdens at all.
If there's the ability to offset those costs, I have no issue, but I certainly would want to hear from the recreation director before we're moving forward with something like this, because I do think that I just want to be able to hear from her that, yes, that we're able to do this, we're able to sustain this, and this is within our plan. Otherwise, it could just be a surprise, and then the recreation revolving account is charged 30, 40,000 or more.
At the last financial update that we had, the recreation revolving account had $360,000 in it.
Yep.
And the liability associated with that account was pretty minimal. So I think that's why Sean is saying we're not going to have any issues there whatsoever. But we can,
Did you
Yeah,
say
Amy-
$300,000?
I-
Just to clarify, did you say
360.
$360,000?
yes.
But I think what David's getting at, and I agree, is just because they have the ability to pay for it, doesn't mean they should have to pay for it. If it's a shared space between
Oh,
the
yes.
senior center and the rec, they'll
Right.
figure out some sort of way to split costs or based on
Yeah.
their usage. And also, to David's point, if they're hosting events at that space, they want to at least be making back what it costs to keep that place heated, and then some, right? Because that's, you know, some of the purpose of their community engagement is to further community engagement. So, so yeah, I think it's important just to make sure that everybody has the same expectations going eyes wide open into this. It's a great opportunity, and
Yeah.
I hope that that's understood. But finances can be tough when you have a budget already figured out, and then you're sort of getting this opportunity midway through the year. That's all.
Max or Patrick, can we find out what it costs and whether or not it's even feasible to, if somebody wanted to, like, have a birthday party there on a
Yes.
Saturday or even in the, you know, something in the evening? How do we cover that insurance-wise, and what are the opportunities there for the community?
That's a facility rental through the schools, isn't it? That's how they currently do it.
Well, that's how it's currently done now,
So then it becomes a facility rental
it's-
through the rec department?
Yeah.
I would
but if it's,
assume.
but it could be done directly through the rec department instead of through the school.
Right.
I would assume it would go through a similar process, like if PTO
It's a
wants to
form,
use the
yeah.
school, we fill out a form, we have to have certain, we have
There's
to
certain
meet
pricing scales for depending on if they're in town,
and we have to pay the
groups and whatnot.
janitors,
Yep,
that sort of thing.
exactly.
Yeah, so I'm not saying this isn't an opportunity. It certainly is. I just want to make sure that the financial component is thought out.
No, that's a great point. I agree with you. And I think that looking from a recreation perspective, I think that we probably should move towards paying more attention to what programs are profitable or making money, so we understand really what we're running, what it's costing to run certain things, whether they're a plus or maybe a negative, in really evaluating what people want to see, right? And where we could potentially maybe make other revenue or create other revenue through the rec department. But I think, you know, getting an understanding of what exactly we're looking to run and what the senior center is actually looking to do with it also, and understanding what their costs are associated with what events they want there or whatnot. So I think we need a deeper dive, really, into both of those pieces to understand it.
So would they be releasing the building, I'm sorry, I don't have the MOU in front of us, because
It sounds like for 2 years.
they'd be releasing the building to us for 2
June,
years.
through June the 25th.
They still ultimately have responsibility, but we're kind
Right.
of renting it, leasing it from them.
So are the janitors paid through the school system or paid through?
There's no janitors working
There's
at the
no
park now.
janitor. Okay.
Well, I guess,
Only because I know that's an issue now, when you go to take,
It won't be an issue here,
so I
You
want
have
to
to
make
because
sure.
it's not, because it would be really more a town building now.
So there's some custodial staff that's required,
Right.
though, right? Even in
Yes.
town buildings, we have a custodial.
So we would bring in, because we wouldn't have the restrictions on custodial staff that you find in the schools. So we would still bring in custodial staff, but it would be different. Like here, there's more restrictions on.
Right, but for example, if we're having recreation programs run out of there,
Mm-hmm.
and, you know, who's going to clean it when somebody's done? Like, how does that work?
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? If the rec is running like, I don't know, breakfast with Santa, let's say,
Yeah.
right? Who's going to go in? I mean, we're not going to expect Danielle and Jackie to,
No, 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 no,
Clean
no, no,
it,
no, no, no,
right?
no, no. We would have,
so that's just
Custodial,
what I'm
yeah,
thinking, like, from a
yeah.
cost perspective, we're somehow custodial staff, even
Those-
running basketball
Right.
programs or whatever, they're going to.
those would all have to get factored
Yeah.
into, similar to when they're running a program here, they factor in
Yeah.
the cost for custodial here and there.
And the senior center, certainly, even more so, if they're going to be using it.
I just want to go back to the first thing Max said, and I'm so happy to hear, because this always kind of bugged me, that there was this plan that I never really saw, that all this space was going to be used for some kind of programming that wasn't really clear. So mysteriously, this entire building that was going to be used, somehow we found a way to have all that stuff happen elsewhere. And is that because the new school is basically, we've got capacity there, so we can run those things in the new school for now?
So, I mean, I think the concept was always to move the superintendent's office, the student services, the business office, in the preschool program, which are all at the middle school now, over to Clark. That's what, for a long time, the idea was. And I don't think it was a bad idea. I mean, I think it could have worked, but just with so it's not like, those programs haven't moved to other spaces. They are where they currently are. When the middle school project happens, like they will likely need to move at that point to somewhere, maybe Clark, maybe to different buildings. It's not figured out yet, doesn't need to be figured out yet. Does that answer the question?
So you're saying that what was planned for there is now just staying where they are?
Change in plans.
It's just delayed.
Yep.
I mean, I view it
Delayed.
more as a delay.
No, it's
couple
not
years
delayed.
away.
No.
Well, it is, though.
There's a
That's-
change in, originally, the plan was to move administration and the preschool
Yeah.
into the Clark. We're not doing that any longer.
Ever?
But that's not what
Doesn't
Max
sound,
just
I mean,
said.
Max
No, it's
said-
not ever planned to be permanently moved there.
Okay.
No, not permanently, but you said you'd like to keep the building
Flexible.
flexible
swing.
so that we
Yeah.
can have it first.
Could be a grade level there, it could
Right.
be these
Got it.
things, we don't know.
So the idea is, we've lit, I think it's pretty clear that there will be a need for renovations at the middle school. There will be a
Right.
need for something to move out of the middle school so that renovations can be done sort of.
Yeah, as a
Temporary
temporary thing.
Yes,
though.
as a
Yeah.
The
temporary
other
thing,
things being
correct.
talked about, though, were, it looked like
Yeah.
there was a permanent need.
Oh, I
Right.
didn't.
Mary Ellen, these were things that you and I kind of bugged us
Yeah,
all along in a
yeah.
way, yeah.
Yeah.
So I didn't mean to make a
No,
federal
that's-
case.
no,
I was
that's
just
good
kind
to
of
clarify.
I was just
Yeah.
glad to hear that we had been more efficient, it sounds like, with the space, or,
Yeah, I always thought, when we were having these discussions prior, maybe I'm not missing a data point that you had, but I always thought that that was a temporary swing space while the project was happening at the middle school, and then once the middle school project was finished, that there was no plan to have them all stay.
no.
That wasn't my
No,
understanding.
it was
That
going to be right away, with the preschool was going to go
Yeah.
there, Edmund was going to go there, and then right away. It wasn't just when the middle school project was
And there was
happening.
a 6
Right.
million.
That's the distinction here.
There was a
so.
$6 million line item on the capital.
Right,
No,
6
I
million, yeah,
understand.
right.
Yes, but I,
Yes.
That's gone.
Yeah. Yeah,
right.
okay, that was point one. Point two is, I'm struggling a little bit, like, why do we need to go through all this? Why, if we're gonna run a program, and we haven't talked about Big Blue Bargains, isn't that part of this concept too?
Big Blue,
somewhere?
Big Blue Bargains is under a separate agreement
Okay,
that they're working out with Max right now.
Yep,
and that's the portable.
yep,
That's why the portable is excluded here.
correct.
Correct.
Okay. But if we wanted to run a senior program or a rec program or whatever, why do we have to go through all these gymnastics? Why don't we just keep it all with the schools and then just do a rental thing like you talked about that they have a form for already?
That's a good point.
And then
Well-
just keep the utilities, like, all this machination we're gonna go through to, like, what about the janitors? What about the utilities? What about the Wi-Fi? What about all these different things? Now we gotta flip them all over.
Well, the school department, it's a vacant building for the school department, so I don't think that there's an opportunity to rent the Clark, like, right now. There's not. So, it's,
No, but they could rent it out to the senior center or to the rec department
They
or
don't-
whatever. Just do a,
but it's unstaffed, right? So, it's unstaffed, the heat is as low as we can get it. Where the school department is operating, and has been planned to operate it as a vacant building, right? Not as a
A
fully
rental unit.
functioning building to be rented out, and the school department doesn't make a killing off of, renting to town programs. It's, if you look at the school department's rental schedule, anytime they're renting to a school, to a recreation program, they're only ever offsetting costs, like, of the,
I don't think anyone here is looking to make a big killing on it. I'm just talking about, like.
or all under the same umbrella.
Right,
Like, this
exactly.
money's all ultimately the town's money.
Just talking about administratively, it just seems like.
My
this-
understanding from the meetings that we've had, the school is not interested in running a rental facility with the town. The school is interested in saying, listen, if we want it, we can have it, and we can use it and see how things work, and then just move from there. So,
Okay.
I think,
I would think, Doug, to your point, that it might be difficult to gauge an interest level to understand what is a reasonable rental fee, because they might not know how much over the course of the year that they are going to be able to rent it, so how much they can offset. So if it's $40,000 for utilities and cleaning and all that for them to run it as we would need it run for it to be available for rental, like, there's no way for them to gauge, like, should they be charging $1,000? Should they be charging $5,000? Should they be like,
Right, but it is a risk shift, right? I mean, back to the earlier
Yeah,
question,
for
right?
sure.
Like, someone's gonna have to pay the $30,000 or whatever it is, basically, and someone's gonna have to program it such that you actually cover that cost. Right.
Right.
right. It's a great opportunity. Danielle, does anybody have any more questions or opinions? I just want to take some type of a straw poll here, because tomorrow night, the school committee is going to be meeting to discuss their opinion on this. So I just, I am completely excited about something like this. I'm in favor of having this happen, and I'd like to send that message to the school committee, and I'd just like to know what everybody else feels. Edie?
I'm excited for the opportunity to open more space up to the public, and I know rec and seniors, both the rec and the senior center, have been needing more space. That is my opinion, but I would like to hear their opinion before. I would like to hear senior center and rec say, yes, we understand and we want it, before we just say, here you go, you can have it.
And burden them with and potentially burden them with the cost. I'm in the same
Yeah, I mean,
boat.
I think it sounds great. I think it sounds wonderful. And if Danielle and Heidi collectively think that's a manageable dollar amount and they can program out the space, fantastic. That's what they've been asking for. I can't
Right.
imagine they wouldn't.
Right.
But I think they deserve a voice here.
I'm not as inclined. I mean, I would definitely like their input. However, I do think when I hear Sean say, this is a great idea, we can definitely make this work, and this definitely checks a couple of our boxes for needing a new facility, I'm more inclined to say, let's make this happen. There's minimal risk here, and I think it's a really great opportunity, especially with hearing both of those directors saying how badly they need more space, so.
Totally agree.
Danielle?
No, I think that I see both sides. I think Katie makes complete sense. I didn't have a conversation with Sean, right? So I'm not aware that he, felt like that was doable, but he knows his department heads, and if he is saying that that is something that they're comfortable with, then I would trust that. At the same time, the rec committee is meeting in 2 weeks, and I'm happy to speak to Danielle about it and talk to her about what the expectation is from a, fiscal, financial standpoint. I don't know about Heidi, but, I think they deserve to know what they would be responsible for, right? If they're being held accountable for their budgets, and they should be, because they're department heads, then they should certainly be aware of what, full circle, what they're required of, managing, so.
That
Yeah.
sounds reasonable to me. Is there any driving need time-wise that we couldn't wait 2 weeks to?
No,
collect
no,
that
no,
input
no,
and-
we're only doing a straw poll here to
Yeah.
send the message.
But it is a great idea.
We're just
and I
sending a
think-
message to the school committee, that's all. We're not taking a vote, we're just sending a message. So, hopefully we can get this wrapped up within a month, and,
I think that we should really find out what programs they're looking to run there, so we know. And we can have, maybe Amy or Patrick can give us an idea of what, for each of the department heads to understand what it's gonna cost them respectively, they would need to let Amy or Patrick know what programs they're gonna run out of that building. And then we can put together, this is what you're gonna be responsible for. Are you okay with it, right? And if they're not, then I'm not really gonna wanna listen to more concerns about them needing space, because this is your option. Either you're gonna make it work or you're not, right? So, that's how I see it.
okay, so. I'm
I guess-
sure the school committee's watching us tonight.
I do also point out, I mean, I guess, not to sound like a total hypocrite, but Max did say that rec is already programming the space for December, right?
Oh, they are.
Yeah, they are anticipating basketball programs in there in December.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So I don't
that would
so
be
much
easy
care
to-
about the details of whether or not they can, like, what the programs are running there, whatever. I just care about that they understand, bottom line, this is what they're responsible for and how they get themselves there. Right?
Yeah. Same page.
Okay. So, moving on from our Clark School memorandum, now we go to my favorite part of the evening, our discussion and vote on the Hadley School Land Development Agreement. And before we even start this, I just want to say thank you to Select Board Member Peter Spelios. Peter was very, very active in getting us to this agreement, laying it out, doing really hard work, making sure that we had good advisors to come in, and it's just much appreciated. He got us where we are today. And then, Katie, you did yeoman's work throughout in these meetings, dealing with the lawyers and our friends with Clearview, and we are finally where we need to be to get to this next step. And Katie's going to go through what this land agreement is going to be. She's going to break it down for us in layman's terms. So, here we go.
I'm an attorney, so if I'm not using layman's terms, somebody tell me. Okay, so I just want to start by mentioning that the LDA is really just like the beginning of our contractual relationship with Delamar. We have obviously had, since the RFP came in and we chose them as the forerunners of the RFP process, we have been working very diligently with them to negotiate the land development agreement and attach thereto the ground lease. The land development agreement is what we're voting on. It would be, if it passes, it would be signed tonight. And then it sort of sets off the chain reaction for all these other date triggers to begin. There's a very long road between tonight and anybody sleeping at Hadley. So I just want to be really frank about that, so we're not sort of sending mixed signals here to the public. I'll give you sort of a breakdown of the timeline. The effective date, if voted successfully tonight, would be this evening. There would be a due diligence period, which is 90 days long. That would be for both the town and Delamar to do some due diligence regarding the building, regarding, you know, if we wanted to look into anything additional on our side with the parties that were involved. Once the 90 days ends, they begin a design schematic process where they submit draft schematic design documents. That's a 60-day period. There's another 6-month period there, beginning at the end of the due diligence period, where they submit construction drawings and specifications. During that period, we have asked them, and they have committed to do public participation, where, you know, this is an open process. They're going to be, the schematic designs are going to be available, and the public will be able to comment on them with concerns. Same thing, obviously, we're not all in the construction business, but they have agreed, and throughout this process have been willing and able to take feedback, change course direction, or take into account that we've said this before, this is a marriage, and the lease attached to this marriage is a lease for 99 years, so it's long-term. You know, we want what's best for our community, and I think they truly feel like what's best for them is parallel to what's best for our community. They have 15 months from the end of the due diligence period to obtain their permits and their financing. Again, the permitting process, the design process, it comes to select board approval, but it is also going through the normal channels of permitting and design, planning, board review, and things of that nature. At the end of 15 months, the exhibit lease to the LDA will be signed. It's a 99-year lease. We feel like it is very fair for both parties. The rent structure is similar to what they proposed in the RFP. Let's see, what else can we say about the lease? Somebody help me. 99 years. Well, anyways, I can talk a little bit more about that, but just to get to the end of the milestone schedule, they'll be coming in 50% completion within 12 months of the execution of the lease, and then substantial completion is about 2 years from the execution of the lease, so you're looking at a 24-month period from the execution of lease to final completion. And then there's a 90-day period for, from the certificate of occupancy when rent begins, and there's a ramp-up period before their pilot begins, which is a payment in lieu of taxes. Like I said, I think we all worked very hard to get to this point, and I'm excited that we have this opportunity to work with Delamar. They're a fantastic brand. They're very reputable. And I think they will be a great addition to that district.
Good job, Katie. Does anybody have any questions?
Katie, I was looking through the documents, so you may have mentioned this. Did you note kind of the time period in which there would be more kind of say-so from anyone publicly that I may have missed?
Yeah, so I think, so obviously there's a permit period, so there's, as the permits come before, whatever boards they come before, there would be public comments, but Delamar has also agreed to have public feedback during the design period. So we have asked and we've held them to that, and they have no issue with that. They've done that before in other cities and towns that they've built hotels in.
And those will be well advertised, and there'll be a few of them.
And recorded.
Yes.
Yes, yep.
And we'll make sure Maura's here.
Well, speaking of Maura, she reminded me, because she thankfully does, so she brought up two things about Linscott and about community space. So can we just comment? I was actually, I don't think there's really any issue with Linscott whatsoever in terms of what's been agreed to here, consistent with what they, proposed to begin with. That was not one of the options where we were having anything connecting into or running into Linscott or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
The community space thing, as part of the town meeting vote, I'm trying to remember the nuance here. I'm sure someone could remind us. Where does that, what exactly was that? How did that land, and how does that land here?
What exactly was that?
When was the vote?
May?
What was
It was,
that?
We-
it was Article 15 of the May
Yeah.
15, 2023 annual town meeting.
Which is, we don't have actually.
Yeah, I don't have the verbiage.
Yeah.
So I don't.
Right.
No, I
just
have,
in front of
no,
us.
I mean, I don't have it right now, Maura.
Yeah.
We absolutely have it. Yeah, we absolutely have it, and I can find out, and I can send. Yes. No,
Oh, yeah, no, we totally have it, just not, but maybe you can, there was a thing about, was that not an amendment that got in about community space, right? And so I'm just trying to remember through all this long process, is that something that level of detail has been discussed, or was reflected somewhere in here, or that would be something that would come in
During
the design process?
Yeah.
And just kind of reassuring people that, definitely, we understand, we got to abide by what was passed, and that has to be part of this.
Yeah, I can tell you right now, there isn't a line in the lease that says this is what the
Right.
town meeting warrant article was amended to, and this is what you're obligated to. But post this meeting, we will make sure that their attorney understands the language of the vote that was taken and their obligations.
We brought that up.
We have talked to them about that, but I
Yeah.
mean, it's like Doug is saying, there's not a line we can point to say, this is the May line.
Well, I mean, there's an attachment for the vote, I mean, so.
Yeah, yep.
So clearly it's gotta be in
Yes,
there, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
But they have committed to abide by the vote and to maintain the public process that was discussed at great lengths with them.
Yep.
Any other questions? Maura, do you want to ask a question?
So my understanding was.
So they can hear you. Yeah. Thank you. Sorry.
My understanding at some previous juncture with Pete Kane was that what was in the warrant and the addendum to the warrant was added in, not in the RFP, but in the agreement. It probably is called something different, but whatever was signed, the Peters said was in there.
Yes, it is an attachment, just, the,
It says right here, it says, whereas the,
Exhibit A is the attached town meeting vote. Sorry, go ahead.
no,
Doug.
you got it? That's it. Yeah, I was just reading, right, the very first part of the agreement. Whereas the town, by vote on Article 15 of the May 15, 2023 annual town meeting, a copy of which is attached here too as Exhibit A and incorporated herein. So,
So it's signing the LDA, they are obligating themselves to the exact
Yeah.
language of town meeting vote.
Great.
So they're
And I
eyes wide open.
reviewed the language with Jared just to make sure that it was recorded. His recording had one word different. He changed it. Pete Kane changed it. It got changed.
Great,
My understanding is.
then we will go to the clerk and the clerk will have it.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other
Can I just
questions?
say real quick, that night, that was not at all what was the plan to do. The plan was that there would be a conversation about that warrant.
Okay, thank you,
And
Maura.
I just on the fly wrote that up, so hopefully it sticks.
Thank you. Okay, so with that, can we have a motion to accept
I'll make a motion.
the land development agreement as presented?
I make a motion to accept the land development agreement as accepted and that we would be signing the LDA this evening if the motion prevails.
Second.
David, second. Danielle?
Yes.
do we need to reference the ground lease at all? That's just a.
It's
The ground lease
in
is an
there.
exhibit
It's
to
an
the
exhibit
LDA, so
in
we
there.
wouldn't be signing that until a time certain under the LDA because there is still a due diligence period and they could, obviously, things could happen between now and then. The deal, like I said, no deal is done until it's done. So there's a lot of time between today and even the signing of the lease. We're at 18 months between signing this document and signing the lease. And so, a lot can happen, hopefully in our favor.
Okay, so all in favor?
Aye. Wonderful. It's very exciting.
That's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so now we will move to the warrant. With our warrant, Patrick, are you going to walk us through the warrant?
I can.
All right.
I
One change, so we will be having a special town meeting on December 9th. Tonight, we're just looking at the warrant. At our next meeting, we'll be opening and closing the warrant.
So all these references to will be changed tonight.
Correct. Okay. So if we, Patrick, you want to start with page 1, Article 1?
That's the one.
Are we putting,
One moment, sorry. I just want to make sure we have the
Yeah,
right
yeah.
version.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Do you want me to share the warrant, or are we just going to verbally go through it at
I
this?
think we haven't opened it, so I think we'll
Just verbally.
verbally.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So Article 1 is a relatively routine article to approve bills of prior fiscal years. There's 4 bills listed here for legal services, shredding, processing of beach passes, and some professional services at the school department. These are bills from fiscal '24 and one very small bill from 2020 that came up. And those total $11,764.88. I am going to confirm with the assistant town accountant that no other bills have come in before the warrant is closed. If we get any more that have come in since this version, we'll just plug them in and discuss them. And that's going to require a 9/10 vote to pass at special town meeting.
Is it normal that we have a school bill in here?
Yeah, that can happen from time to time, any department.
I just don't ever remember the school having a bill.
Yeah, they're usually pretty good. They're on their bills, but
We
Okay,
often have a bill that's 4 or 5 years old, really,
that's unusual.
right?
It's
Very
very minimal. It's a bill that we owe from a vendor that we use every year, so we want to make sure we honor it.
can you just put a note there? Can you go back and find out under vendor 2568 why that bill, those professional services, why that bill is coming in so late, and the line item? Because I'm just wondering if we can move that to a different fund. I'll call you on that one, if you could just
Yep.
find out who that was.
Yep, I have it.
Okay. Okay, so,
Article 2?
there you go.
All right. Article 2 is to amend appropriations for the fiscal year '25 operating budget. The purpose of this article is to fund the new collective bargaining agreement with the Administrative Professionals Union. And Amy has provided the specific line items that will be amended at special town meeting, and the amounts that are necessary to fund the agreement. The total of the funding changes is, let me see if that's in here. Looks to be about $5,000.
And we're not taking that just strictly out of the salary reserve?
Yep, it is. So it's a budget line item transfer from salary reserve to the individual departments. And the reason it's on a town meeting warrant is because outside of the year-end shuffle process, it would have
Right.
to be an amendment from town meeting.
Okay. Okay,
Okay, Article 3 is to approve transfer of free cash for homeless and foster care transportation. And the purpose of this article is to transfer funds that were received for costs that the school department incurred last year for foster care and transportation. The costs are variable, and the reimbursement comes in after the fiscal year closes, so we want to make sure that we credit them with the monies that they've already expended. And we have done this in the past. It's a routine article.
does that money then go into their operating, or does that go into their,
Goes into their operating budget.
okay,
Which they've already
Because
expended.
they've already expended.
Yeah,
it,
they
right?
incurred the expense last year. I believe it says in the article comment that it was about $80,000.
76.
And they get reimbursed only a percentage of it from the state. So we're crediting them with what the town has received from the state.
got it.
Madam Chair, should we put the articles up on
No.
on the screen for the?
Well, Patrick asked, and we said, because we weren't opening the warrant.
Okay.
Next,
okay.
we're gonna do
Fair-
that next
Fair
week.
enough, okay.
Okay.
Okay,
Article 4 is a settlement, final settlement for eminent domain. This is related to the UU church easement for the new school. And that would be to either transfer from available funds or borrow a sum of money to pay that settlement.
okay. You jumped to number 6.
Yep. Article 6 is to approve transfer of free cash to adjust the tax rate. That's a routine article that we do at special town meeting. The last few years, we've done this. And that would be to take free cash, which was recently certified. I believe you all are aware of that. To the extent that it's available, we could use that to offset the tax rate this year.
Came via email
3.8 or 3.9?
from Amy, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, no, it came from, who did it come from via email?
Directly from the
Directly
state to all of you. If you don't have it, I can recirculate it.
Yeah, it came from the state.
And Patrick, was the number that was received in free cash, was that above or below our projected?
I think it was slightly above our projections. It came in about 3.9 million, I think we were expecting like 3.6, I think Amy was forecasting. So that's good. It's not like a earth-shattering amount different than our expectation, but it's in the right direction.
And then do we have a recommendation from the finance team as to what that number would be?
Not at this time.
Not at this time, but we'll get that soon.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of the warrant.
So we do have a couple of things that we've got to double check, in case we have to make some adjustments into capital.
Yep.
There's just a couple other things we have to just take a peek at.
Yep.
And then, so we'll have something a little bit more substantial for our next meeting. And then we can just get it ready to go. Okay? Does anybody have any questions on this? Okay, so moving along, we will now discuss the climate resiliency plan update. I just have a question. Did you want to discuss this? Because I didn't get any information until late today, and I know that that was a big issue in the past for select board members.
Oh,
I'm good with it, but
it was sent out Thursday.
Well, there was some additional information.
It was just the
too? It was just
PowerPoint version
PowerPoint
of the
Oh, the
same-
PowerPoint.
same information.
okay,
Data we
right.
had in our packet.
Okay.
Nice.
I just want to make sure you're okay with it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so Doug is going to walk us through that.
Well, I'm not the expert here. And Dave Peterson from Kleinfelder is on. So, I mean, I can read stuff out, but, you know, if you really want to understand what's involved in this, I think we should leverage their expertise in asking questions at least. But I can, I can just, give the framework. And to pull back for a second, this is pursuant to the conversations we've had for months. We applied for 2 grants. We didn't get either of them. And, but we did put money in ARPA, $200,000 to address this. We hoped that was just going to be a match. Now it looks like, if we also decide that we would need to use that and proceed on this without a grant at this point, the total, and you can put up the slides, Diane. The total scope for both of those proposals was in the $350,000 to $400,000 range. In discussions with, let's see, Harbor and Water Advisory Committee Chair, some discussion back and forth with Danielle and I, with the Climate Action Resiliency Chair, with Water and Sewer Advisory Chair, with the CIC Chair. So a lot of chairs. So there's been ongoing discussion to try to kind of work through this whole process from different vantage points. And so, what we have in front of us, what you see on the screen here is the different, high-level components of what we feel is a significant investment for sure, state that clearly, but also, something that, pick a storm, pick a place over the last 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, unfortunately could be coming to, our shores here at any point. So I think at least some of us, maybe all of us, feel some urgency in proceeding with some really solid planning, leveraging the expertise of Kleinfelder and other subsidiary groups that they would be partnering with to do this. We'd have to think through the procurement and, all those aspects of the process here, but they've, put forward these proposals. And so there's just a project administration piece, community engagement. You can see on the screen, very significant amount of money for community engagement. This would be primarily focused on the kind of Fisherman's Beach area, maybe up to Eisman's, all the way back to Phillips Park, because there's flooding issues, obviously coming off the water, but there's inland flooding. We all saw that in North Carolina. It's not just from the ocean side here. So in addition to the community engagement, there's the vulnerability analysis on the coastal side. There's a whole host of alternatives that are part of this, like 12 or 14 different options, everything from managed retreat to larger seawalls to moving the fish house to a living reef to et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so, there's that analysis in general, the kind of the flood protection approach, and then the recommendations. So that's kind of the core as they're proposing it, which is 291,000. And then you can go much deeper on some of these specific elements. And frankly, I would really want Dave to comment, if that's acceptable, on what we would be giving up by not doing some of these, or if they can be decided on later, if you do the core and then you decide on whether or not you need to do some of the add-ons, how the interplay of that works, because frankly, we never really got into that with the proposals because we were actually hoping we could do all of this.
Well, she's not, is she online? Is the chair of the Resiliency Committee here?
Martha Schmidt, I don't see her name there.
Okay. So one question I have here is when I looked at what you had sent earlier, when I look at it, I sit and I say to I was just saying, what is the overall plan? What is the committee advising here? What are we looking at as far as long-term planning here? And I'm not really hearing what the committee is saying, what the long-term planning is here, and I would really like to hear that. I'm like looking at all these numbers. These seem a little bit overwhelming, of course, but without having, like, which way are we going? Like we have here, fishermen's, and how did the committee come up with fishermen's versus Kings Beach or any other place? And what is it we're really trying to accomplish? The other thing is, we had a meeting, I think a year ago, of the secretary, a new secretary that had been appointed by the administration, the climate czar. And the climate czar is very clear that there was going to be a significant amount of grant opportunity for resiliency, not just the coastal zone management funding, but resiliency. And I'm looking at this, at spending ARPA money when we were told that there was going to be quite a lot of money for grant funding. The other thing that I really would like to get a great understanding about is the CZM grant that we didn't get, and what was the name of the other grant that we? MVP. And it appears that we have missed out on these grants for the last few years. And I would really like to know, what is the analysis from the Resiliency Committee to understanding why we're not getting these grants, and what are we going to do to get these grants? Those are the things that I really want to hear, versus Kleinfelder giving us a breakdown of what these things are. I was hoping tonight we would hear that, and Kleinfelder come back at a later time and explain the features and benefits of these different programs. So that's where I'm coming from, as far as an overall plan that really can get a little clarity to where we're going.
Yeah, I guess I'll just, I'm not sure if I have anything really terribly different to say, but I think maybe what I'm hopefully you're missing is that this scope is the product of not just the climate, but all these other committees as well, meeting together with Marzi in the process of putting together these proposals. So it's the cumulative, not just one person or one committee's perspective, but trying to get kind of the whole kaleidoscope together, so that we weren't just picking and choosing, because some of my circular firing squad that we were in was, trying to say, no, I know what the right answer is. No, I know what the right answer is. No, I know what the right answer is, and kind of doing this. And so we all kind of got on the same page to say what the totality of the scope is, so that we could, look at people, as we talked about community engagement. Here are all the different alternatives. We weren't picking just this one or just that one to look at, but we were looking at the whole menu. Everyone got on board with that. not to say that everyone felt like they meant every single one of those alternatives they had decided was okay, but just that should be the menu. And we should look at that menu and analyze it, and that's what this process was that we went through with Kleinfelder. And so really nothing's changed except for the fact, unfortunately, we didn't win what are incredibly competitive grants. But, you know, nothing's stopping in terms of climate change or flooding or anything else. So, you know, we're left in the position to say, you know, we could have people come in next time and say, yes, I agree, this was a scope, but we've done that. Unfortunately, Marzi's not here to, you know, say that as well, but that is the truth. And my hope is that we can, you know, ask Kleinfelder if we have some questions of clarification here about what's incorporated here, what could easily be taken out, what could be pushed off. It's not to say that another grant comes along, we'll apply for another grant. You know, if we're going halfway down this process and we feel like, oh, now because we got another 6 months in, you know, maybe we had too many options on the board. Maybe if we got more focus after 6 months of this, and then another cycle comes around for MVP or CZM or anything else, definitely can apply for that. But the point is, I don't feel great. I certainly don't feel comfortable just sitting by and saying, we're just gonna wait till the next grant comes along to do anything.
Right, but I think what I'm still trying to get at is what, I see this is like, so this is like a menu, and then we go out and look at all this menu, and then, like, I feel like there's no plan here as far as which direction should we really attack first.
That's exactly the point.
I think-
Because no one knows that. You have to do the analysis to figure out, you know, and if you're, maybe if I'm misinterpreting you, but like with specific intervention strategies, that's exactly the problem we have, is we do not have the facts to know which one to pursue. That's what this process is about. It's an analytical process with all the latest data about flooding or about rainfall or sea level rise or whatever it is, to understand which of those things is actually going to be effective in addressing the issue.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions. So, did you say we had 200,000 earmarked in ARPA money for a portion of this?
Yes.
Okay,
It was to match,
yeah,
Grant organization.
for grants that we didn't get, right. So the Climate and Resiliency Committee has existed for how long?
2 years?
Okay, so in the 2 years that they've existed, they haven't come up with any type of hierarchy list of what we need to accomplish, what we need to attack, what our priorities are, or have they?
There's been a lot done on more the greenhouse gas emissions side of things. Has been a larger, I'd say, progress piece. And we continually get caught up in not having the facts because, you know, we don't have the models that, you know, these outside groups do to actually model and figure out what the interventions need to be.
Okay.
That we've been caught up in, like, applying for the grants and, you know, figuring out our strategy or how far we can get on our own, which is what's in front of us.
Okay, and Harbor Waterfront also hasn't attacked any of these things, or have they?
Well, I mean, there's been the pursuit of a grant way back when for the Living Reef, right?
Right.
And so, which was not successful. I mean, that was the piece that was in the Harbor and Water Plan, which was approved by the Select Board before I was here. And, but, you know, I think that, you know, definitely has questions and people need to have answers to that. And that's you know, many questions and many dollars. And so, but, you know, maybe there's no way around having that. But that's one of the fundamental things here that needs to be figured out.
So it's almost to me, it seems to me like there's overlapping responsibility or interest, right? There's climate and coastal resiliency, there's harbor waterfront, you know, there's capital, there's all these various committees, water and sewer. And it's like everybody's kind of going in their own direction with no cohesive hierarchy plan, when they all kind of touch similar things.
I think that's what this is.
That's exactly what this is, because
Okay.
they have.
So they all met with-
it doesn't feel like
I know,
that.
I know,
So-
but maybe
so-
that's because you guys didn't like make the sausage, but I think that's
Well, my concern is, I've been going to Harbor Waterfront meetings for the past 2 months, and I've never seen anything about anything that's on here. And I've talked to people, I've talked to Martha Schmidt, Suzanne Hale, I've talked to various people that have expressed concerns with the way Harbor Waterfront operates, and again, it's like everybody's operating independently. So I feel like we need to have almost one committee that is, various representation from all of these different committees compiled so that we can have one plan, and this could be it, and attack it, but at least we know who we're divvying this stuff out to, and that they're actually following through on what we want them to follow through on, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I understand.
I just want to make sure we're doing what,
Yeah.
we give them a task that they can accomplish, and it's going to be something that, we need them to do, right? And it's something that we're concerned with, and I'm right with you. I have huge concerns about all of this stuff, resiliency-wise. But I just am concerned that so many people are operating in different directions, that we're applying for grants all over the place, we're getting none, and, it's not like a cohesive, concerted effort, right? I feel like we might have more luck if we're attacking it from one central piece.
Yeah, I guess, I'm not sure how I can say this any differently, but there obviously are kind of, it's like a three-piece overlapping Venn diagram, right? Of, climate, harbor and water, CIC, water and sewer. Of course, they all touch the coast, right? But climate and resiliency goes way beyond the coast, right? For example, right? Water and sewer is, I mean, I don't know if we really need to kind of get into like why we have the different committees. Maybe we do, but nonetheless, we do have them, and all of these people, all the chairs, and I know, we've talked about input into this in the climate resiliency committee meetings. I can't speak to, literally what conversations were had in other meetings, but at least the chairs of all of those have come together, I don't know, half a dozen times in this process of coming up with what we should put in the grant proposals and how we bring all these different perspectives together, because, Martha, or Suzanne may have a perspective of their own, but it's not like we took a vote of the climate plan and said that we should do X intervention, because nobody knows what the right intervention is.
But they definitely have voiced concerns about how the other committees affect theirs, to me, anyway, so.
Which, again, I was so sick and tired of hearing, like, this person of this committee saying this is definitely the solution, or they have a concern with this over here, that I kind of rallied and brought all of them together in order to make sure we had everyone's perspective incorporated. Again, it's not...
But don't you think it's important to hear from them then? I'd like to kind of have them here saying that, right? Because, I mean, I'm hearing different things. I'm hearing, things from people in isolation, right? Or, different conversations that are, I mean, I was at that August meeting at Harbor Waterfront, and, Suzanne Hale spoke up, and everybody had a lot of concerns and issues about the way Harbor Waterfront was operating, their lack of transparency, their inaccurate stuff, their potential falsehood. I mean, there's stuff that people have real concerns about. So I kind of would want to hear from all of those committee chairs together in one room to say, this is what's going on. This is, because we kind of heard that in August. I mean, I did anyway. I don't know. I think we all were at that meeting.
Yeah, that's totally fine, totally fine. I think we're conflating a couple things. This isn't a proposal about the way the Harbor and Waterfront Advisory Committee operates, right? This is about us trying to get out of this squabbling and people thinking that they have the answer without having done the analysis. Right. And I'm trying to actually move past that, kind of opinion into more of a fact-based approach to what the solution should be.
I'd like to hear those opinions.
Yeah. I get it. That makes sense.
I think my understanding, as Doug, I think, is trying to convey, he just said this, but like, we're trying to get out of a personal struggle between chairs and committees and get the facts so that we can say, this is the direction we're going on, not because a particular chair or even a particular committee feel like this is the direction we should go on, but actually back that opinion with some factual analysis as best we can, because obviously we understand climate is changing every single day, and what we know yesterday is not what we're gonna know tomorrow. But in order to inform the financial decisions that we're making, because no committee that we've named tonight has the ability to spend any money unless they get a grant.
Right.
And we approve it. So we can task them with all these things, but unless we empower them economically to do them, I mean, that part's on us to do that. So I understand your hesitation, because if 10 people got in a room and you're not sure how that conversation went, you want to hear from those 10 people, we should hear from them. However, what we are trying, I think what is trying to be done here is that regardless of what those 10 people say, we're trying to get some fact-based evidence to go forward in
I'm
a
all for
direction.
that. I'm all for the fact-based evidence, but either we're going to take into consideration what the committees say or we're not, right? So if we're contemplating going around them and just creating our own list, I want to make sure that that's the intent. Do you know what I'm saying? Like it,
Well, I guess, how could you make a list if you don't have the facts yet? I think that's the part that I'm confused about.
so,
There's no going around, Danielle, that's why, I mean, I've
Well-
been working with them, you know, for months.
but I don't have that same opinion. I don't have that same feeling. I don't know what you've done, to be quite honest with you. I just know that we have a list
I
of,
just said it 3 times, I mean, I'm confused.
So maybe we should just invite,
Why don't we invite, yeah, I'd
when
like,
Marzi's back, we can invite the folks who participated other than Doug, and we can have this conversation again with everybody.
I mean, we're talking about a lot of money. So I think that, and I am all for it. I'm not for, here's my other piece. Where did, this came from, did you say Dan Peterson? I don't know who that is, but
From Kleinfelder.
Kleinfelder, right? So how do we automatically, is Kleinfelder just the default? Do we consider other companies, or is it automatically this town uses Kleinfelder? How do we come to that conclusion? And then how do we come to these numbers? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, where is the vetting process? How does that happen? Do we always have to use Kleinfelder because we've
No.
used them for other things?
No.
Have we considered others that are not?
Yes, we have. And we went through that process amongst all those people before we applied for the first grant.
Okay, and why did we go with Kleinfelder? Why didn't we utilize another? Why, if Kleinfelder is constantly applying for grants or helping us apply for grants that we're not getting, why aren't we considering other people that might be more effective in getting us grants? Is that the problem? Is it the way we're writing them? Is it that we don't have a grants manager? I don't know. Like,
what about if we, let me just, hold on a minute. Let me just throw this out there. What about if we were to have a meeting and have Marzi give us the update on what our historically we have done with these larger grants, how we're missing out, what the recommendation is. I do know that people from CZM will tell us, you know, what our shortfalls are with recommendations. And what about if we have Marzi in here and we do have some of these committee heads in here and get a little bit bigger picture on what their opinions are too? And
I mean, we're a coastal community.
Still have
This is
time.
going to be the tip of the iceberg about what we need to spend to make sure this community is safe from coastal concerns. And we know that the state, right, or if I've heard correctly, the state has tons of grants and tons of money available. So why aren't we trying to figure out who can get us that money and how best to go about that? I don't know. That's just, I'm just throwing it out there. We're going to spend however much here, but this is just the beginning, right? So we need grants, and we need to get some grant money. So how do we best do that? I'm just throwing stuff out there. I'm not saying this isn't logical, warranted stuff. Not at all. I just don't understand the process. That's why I'm asking.
I think that there are things running in parallel here. Like, we can't, yes, we should be talking about grants. We should be talking about grants, why we didn't get grants. We should be talking about, is there a refined process to get grants? I think Doug's done a lot of legwork to figure out, are there ways we could be writing our grants better in conjunction with other groups in town so that we are more unified in the way that we're talking about grant writing? I think Marzi's been a player in that conversation, very much so. And that we have been pushing towards some of that. I think there is a limitation there because we don't have a grant writer on, and Marzi does a lot of
Right,
this, and
right.
the committee chairs, our committees do a lot of this as well. But that runs in parallel to future coastal resiliency projects. And we have applied for multiple grants. We have not gotten them. I'm not denying that information. But at some point, we have to decide what do we go forward on to obtain some additional information on so that we have better information when we're writing grants.
Right.
We have a clearer direction. We have a more narrow scope, maybe.
Absolutely.
Like maybe that, I'd love to hear from Marzi, but maybe that's some of the feedback we're getting, like our scope is too broad.
Maybe.
We don't have a direction. Maybe we don't have a shovel-ready project. I mean, Marzi said multiple times in front of us, shovel-ready projects are great for grant writing, right? Because they know it's gonna happen and they feel good about backing it.
Right.
So maybe that's some of the issue that we're having here. I'm just making.
It is.
There you go.
That is the problem.
There you
Yeah.
go.
And
But
so
we don't know what the project should be.
Right.
Right.
Because we haven't done the analysis.
we're like too
Yeah.
theoretical and not
I
practical.
get it, and we're late to the game. I mean, we have to act now. I really don't think we can afford to wait anymore. Was there consideration for a resiliency manager at one point? Did I make that up, or am I
Yep,
mishearing that?
yep.
I mean,
That's another grant
where
we
does,
can get.
okay. So where does that stand? Do we not, is that not something we're still considering?
Absolutely. Every grant that comes along.
Or even
we're trying.
as
There's
just a
another one.
position?
Yep.
A regular budgeted position?
You better believe I'll be suggesting that as we go through the budget.
Because, I mean, wouldn't that then, like, have someone with the scope, and
Yeah.
then, I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there.
Doug, is there feedback from Kleinfelder or the committee chairs that priority, that maybe that should be a priority over this? That to have somebody on staff sort of
That is their sole purpose. and job.
managing what this spend might be going forward? Because right now, who would be managing is Kleinfelder, right? Or
Well, the
whomever.
project administrator,
What?
Project administrator.
project administration.
Yeah, but
That's their internal stuff, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it'd be.
Right, but not staff that we
Right.
employ.
It'd be Marzi, for now.
Right.
Ideally, yeah, it would be this, I mean, it's not an either or, really.
It's an and, but.
Patrick left, I wanted to know I forget what the rules, Gina, I don't know if you would know this. What are the rules around spending ARPA money on a consultant? There is specific,
Couldn't you?
yeah, there's actually specific, I'll email
I think
Amy on that.
More of the issue was hiring a
Yeah,
staff person.
exactly.
Right,
That's what you can't do.
yeah.
Yeah.
You can,
I would be curious to
Yeah.
know on the optional things, I know you mentioned this when you first started, and the cost of these things are like time and place in when other work or research is being done, and that's why the cost is, would it increase if we didn't do it as an add-on? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, does it fall into a spot in the process where we have a cost savings because we're in that part of the process? Or can we literally add them on at any time at this dollar amount? Kleinfeld?
Can Kleinfelder at least answer that question as a basic one?
Yeah.
Dave, are the add-ons something that needs to be known basically in the beginning of the process, or is that something that can be decided as you move along? Can't hear you, Dave. We're checking
hear
on
me
our
now?
end, too.
Can you
Go
try
ahead, Dave.
again, Dave?
All right, can you
Oh,
hear me
there you
okay?
are. Yes.
there we go.
Okay. Also, just so everyone's aware, I invited Kyle Johnson and Seth from Kleinfelder as well. Kyle's our practice leader in climate resiliency on the East Division of Kleinfelder. So he's got a lot more chops on this than I do. So he can fill in anywhere that I miss on this. But just to answer your question on optional add-on services, I think the question that was asked of us was the budget and the scope that was submitted to the MVP and CZM programs, was in the proximal area of like 400,000. Given that we still want to do something. You know, there's a minimal amount of work that we want to push along. What does that base amount of work look like? And what can we potentially put off to the side? So the stuff off to the side, either they give us better science or information on some of the assessment of alternatives on vulnerability, or there are things that are sort of a different animal altogether, and they're related but can be done totally separately.
Okay.
So by way of an example, I guess, was this like rainfall flood model is something that there's a real concern about just coastal inundation from the ocean, but at the same time there can be rainfall flooding happening at the same time. So those two things together, what does that look like? So you don't have to study those together. You can add a flood model from rainfall like after the fact. So that's why we kind of pulled that out as sort of an optional sort of add-on service, for example.
But Dave, just to make sure it's clear, like if you don't do a rainfall model at the same time, and then you're evaluating the alternatives without that additional information, you may be designing your intervention inappropriately. Yes or no?
So the coastal flood is going to give you sort of a key elevation that you want to design around. We'll call that the design flood elevation. And that's going to create sort of like your physical barrier. Once you've established that, you're going to create an inability or difficulty for like rainfall to get out, you know, if it's like a hard infrastructure on the backside of it. So that's something that you're going to want to know is going to happen once you install something like that. Kyle's going to add on to what I'm talking about. Hey, Kyle.
Yeah, can folks hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, I think just a little bit of background information here too. I mean, there has been a study. Back in 2016, there was a coastal vulnerability analysis that was performed using the Boston Harbor flood risk model data and other data available at that time. That baseline vulnerability assessment, you know, hasn't been updated since. And in the time since, there's been significant advances in coastal modeling. The Massachusetts Coastal Flood Risk Model by Woods Hole Group and others has kind of shown increased vulnerability and risk at earlier timeframes. The vulnerability assessment that was done in 2016 did not consider, you know, the compound flood risk from rainfall and sea level rise together. It didn't look at, you know, nuisance tidal flooding at a significant degree too. So there were limitations of the 2016 analysis. It was robust at the time. It actually predated the MVP program. The town got grandfathered into the MVP program at that time, but there's been a lot of, you know, advancements in the data since then. So I think just in terms of, you know, screening and prioritization, it's worth noting that the 2016 study did not, you know, put forward a course of, you know, align this project with this grant funding source, align this one with this one. It wasn't necessarily like a capital plan to do this at this time frame. It was a vulnerability assessment. So in the time since, there have been specific projects that have moved forward, but I think part of this is exactly that. It's revisiting the prioritization piece of what to do when, and, you know, part of, you know, the base scope presented here on the left is really that. It's the study component that's going to inform the rest. And one thing that, you know, is you know, something that's worth pointing out is like the different groups that have been involved in this process on the town side. You know, there isn't a standing like coastal resilience or climate resilience committee. There's, you know, a climate action committee that speaks, you know, a lot to greenhouse gases and climate action generally. There's the harbor and waterfront group that, you know, has multiple lenses beyond just like resiliency too. So I think, you know, on our side, I mean, all in favor of, you know, having, you know, more of a dedicated program manager or somebody on the town side that's helping steward this and steward decisions about which grants to apply for and steward that process, all in favor of that. I think part of what the challenge has been is even getting the grant funding to do study and bring the study up to present, like the conditions now with new modeling, which is, you know, a lot of the feedback has been, you know, that a lot lot of the projects being prioritized by these very competitive grant programs are much more established projects that are further along and closer to shovel in the ground. There's other priorities. I won't get into them today, but there's a lot of focus on environmental justice, disadvantaged populations, their input in these processes, and regional projects. So there's a lot of good feedback that we have gotten from these grant applications. But I think a big key piece here is the need to revisit the 2016 study and prioritization, and also understand these other compounding climate risks that weren't a focus of the 2016 study.
Is there a line item here on the cost to update the 2016? Am I not, I don't see it, but maybe I'm not.
I think that gets you, well, depending on how you want to do it, I mean, they could probably answer more, but just to try to be succinct about it, I think that's primarily coastal vulnerability analysis line.
Yeah, it'd be that, and then you need to borrow a little bit out of like project administration, community engagement probably, but yes.
So
I think that's.
But that's, I just want to say, that's not, I mean, that's like getting back to the starting line of 10 years ago. Like, I just.
He just said that it's significantly different, so I'm just asking. I'm asking, if it's significantly different, is there a line item here to update that plan? That's my question. And if that's line item number 3, that answers my question. Coastal vulnerability update, that's what that is?
Plus a little bit for
Plus a little
project
bit of
admin
the
and
first,
community engagement, yep.
the two previous.
But then we just have a
Report that tells us
that
nowhere to.
we've done, like, we don't have a way to do anything about it. I think.
But couldn't that be step 1? Couldn't that be step 1, and then step 2 is hiring a resiliency manager that is their sole focus, and they can then guide us towards what projects take what precedence and work with these guys to tailor an approach that's current and applicable to us. No? Does that not?
I hear the need to be incremental in our approach. However, when we had tried that last, so much time lapsed that the data becomes stale and it's not useful.
Totally.
So I understand the need to be thoughtful about how we spend our money, and
Or maybe not even update the study, but maybe the key piece is getting the person, the actual.
Well, that's why I had asked the question, like, is this cart before the horse? Like, is it more important we get the person in, and the person facilitates this so
Right.
that when the person, whoever the person is, and there's a line item for that person, that it continues on and on and
Right.
on, right? And that there's actual incremental progress happening? Or do we feel like if we spend these funds and we get this data, and then we have the data, then the person actually has something to do? Because what else would the person be doing, right?
Well, I mean, I think they could be doing a lot, right? They could be
Well, we
looking
don't
at.
have any,
But don't we have a
current
study
data.
from 2016?
Yeah, but
that-
But you can't operationalize that because there's either you're using outdated data.
But isn't that how they gave us this? Isn't that what he just said, that that they used part of 2016 to give us how we progressed to the next step? Or where did we get this then? Where did this come from?
No, part of this is updating that data. Yeah.
That's the third line that Mary Ellen asked about, coastal vulnerability analysis.
The rest of it?
Is builds on, you got to update all the data, the baseline data. That's the first step. Then you start looking at all the different alternatives to address the problem. That's Fisherman's Beach alternatives analysis, right? And then we have to go into all the detail to kind of drive down through it. But we also have to realize that with the ARPA money, we need a contract in place by December 31st, okay? And so it seems to me that we've been waiting and waiting for a grant, and we could keep waiting and also wait and hope that we have a person in the budget or wherever else it comes from. And so that means you're waiting till July to even start, and then you post, and then maybe you hire someone, and now we're a year from now, we're at the starting line again without any more information. So
Almost
the point,
like an offset. I'm just wondering, in the ARPA funds, Amy had said something about,
We can use the funds to offset somebody else's budget to move line item to hire someone?
want to talk to Amy about,
But if we have 200,000 that we were planning to spend for this, why can't we find what we can do in here for 200,000?
That would be
To
great.
at least get
Amen,
it,
sister.
to at least like, it's not gonna do everything,
No,
but it's
no.
at least gonna start the process. And then we're gonna look
That was the point.
for July to put this person on. I mean, I really do think that a coastal community town needs somebody that is their sole focus. I think that's my belief. I know maybe, it's not something that everybody buys into, but I think we should look
We just
at,
had an 80-degree day today.
well, yeah.
So
I mean,
I
I
think
think
we
that,
have to buy into it.
so I want to, I think this is a conversation we have to continue to have. I just think, I do want to hear from Martha and any of the other chairs in here, and I do want to find out from Amy what our flexibility is. We do have until the end of December to sign off on a contract, so we do have a little bit of time here.
Yes,
I would like to hear from Kleinfelder, could you tell me on the left side, I'm assuming on the left side, what you would prioritize for us to utilize this 200,000 that we were going to previously allocate? Are there certain things that we could do there, or maybe it's coupled with things on the right as well? But are there things that you can point to that we would, to kick this off, if we were able to use that 200,000?
Yeah, so the base services is, from my understanding, is kind of that amalgamation of the various chairs and, where they see their priorities. That's sort of what the ask of us was, to take the MVP CZM grants and pull out what kind of the bare minimum was. So Fisherman's Beach kind of rose to the top.
Okay.
Because that's of some interest to the chairs. So that includes, the fish house, the Fisherman's Beach, the pier. That also includes the assessment of the living reef concept.
Living reef concept, yeah.
So those are all ideas that were pretty important. I think but hearing this conversation is really helpful because of, to Katie's point, really just trying to understand what's the baseline data where we are, right? So that coastal vulnerability analysis really, to me, is the update that we've all been kind of waiting to do for quite a long time. Okay. Every time we run into a CZM or an MVP grant application, we're always including this piece in there because you can't really do anything until you at least do that update.
Okay.
The second piece that I might throw out there for consideration would be whether or not, pulling from the right-hand side, you pair in the rainfall-based flooding as well, so you can see those two things together.
So that's the rainfall-based flood model?
35,000.
Is that?
Yeah, so,
Okay.
yep, so that's the model. There's, the flow metering program is something that would allow you to get empirical data to calibrate the model or have some confidence in the model. Those numbers can be massaged and things like that. So if you were to take all of these little pieces and stick them together, we're getting to that 100 to 120,000 range-ish, without adding in, some of those other optional pieces. But that would take out all the Fisherman's Beach focused stuff, right? So that's, so again, that's something where if you get Martha and the other chairs in a room and have that conversation with them, you could maybe come to a consensus as to what the appropriate base starting point is.
So that effectively handles Fisherman's Beach, though, but what about the rest of the coast? What about?
Well, so the coastal vulnerability analysis and the rainfall, actually the rainfall was based on Fisherman's, actually, that I have to remember that point. But the coastal vulnerability analysis is the entire coastline.
Entire coast.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so
So those three.
it is getting a little bit late. Can we say we're going to put this back onto a agenda? And why don't you and I talk about how you want to put it back on the agenda?
Yeah, I mean, I would love.
Next
for-
meeting with
Yeah.
whoever you want to
meeting,
be
yeah.
here, Jamie.
If, I guess anybody who came to those meetings should just be invited to have,
Yeah.
to participate with us. But I would just like to know sort of a little refined scope, like if we only had $200,000,
Right.
where should we
Where it's
focus?
best served.
Because we have committed ARPA funds in regardless of whether we got a grant or not, we committed ARPA funds to climate resiliency, and that was earmarked for $200,000. So we should be thinking about the most efficient way to spend those funds so that we have as best we can, have real data so that we can do something with it. And then we should understand, hopefully, from the data, the cost of how to use the data going forward, and then maybe trying to get some, if not all of those things into the capital improvement plan so that we can stop looking at how we have data and start looking at how we use data.
Right.
Okay,
Got it.
so we will wrap that up and we'll move on. Please, yep. So next, we're going to, I have an old agenda here. Did we move the boards and commissions into consent, or is it
Yeah.
a line item 9? Okay, so, all right, so now we're moving to the consent agenda. And can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I just want to address, if I could, through you, Chairwoman, my appointments, my choices for Harbor Waterfront. Because
Sure, so why don't we pull that out? Can we pull that out, and then can we approve?
Can we also pull the cultural council out, too?
Yes, so we're going to pull out the councils, and then can we have a motion to approve the consent agenda minus the 2 that we pulled out there?
Sure. National Grid.
Pull out the minutes for the moment. I just need to look at one thing, sorry. Pull out the minutes for just 1 minute. It's one thing I needed to check.
Okay,
So motion to approve the consent agenda, taking out one.
minus the minutes, minus the committee appointments. So can we,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so now, you want to hit the minutes real quick?
We do that one last?
Okay, let's go to Cultural Council.
Yep.
Hannah Sharpless and Alexandra Bigley.
Cultural Council, as we know, has kind of suffered from lack of interest, but maybe our discussion at the last meeting helped to surface more interest. And so I actually worked more with Diane to kind of assess the various candidates and, obviously propose the 2 that are in front of us.
Diane does a tremendous amount of work around the Cultural Council,
Yes.
so.
So-
David?
So Doug, did you work in conjunction with the chair to? There is no chair for this. Okay,
That's why I was,
got it. That's why Diane and.
I was
Doug-
politely
got it,
saying
got
I
it,
worked
fair,
with
fair, fair,
Diane.
fair. Got it.
Doug, is the hope that they'll appoint a chair once they have more
absolutely,
membership?
they will need to appoint a chair, yes. Yes. We're about to miss out on
Some
funding.
funding.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so could we have a motion to approve Hannah Sharpless and Alexandra Bigley to the Cultural Council?
So moved. Oops.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So moved. So now let's go to the Harbor and Waterfront Advisory Committee. Ted Dooley, Scott McBurney, Amy Linger, Michael Gambale, and John Ingalls.
Yes.
Danielle?
So Diane, thank you for your work on this one, because we had so many applicants, and some of them dated back 2 years from when they first applied. This committee had an open position on it that oddly enough was not full. I don't know why. I did reach out to the chair. This was concerning to me from the very beginning, from the first meeting I went to in August. I felt like that meeting was so incredibly divisive, and people had some real concerns about the way that Harbor Waterfront operates. And I felt, from my perspective, that we needed to have a more balanced approach to the committee itself. So when I reached out to the chair, as I have done in the past, with zoning and the other boards that I'm a liaison to, I wanted to set up a time to meet on Zoom or to meet on Teams so we could go over the applications. I sent them to him, Diane sent them to him, so he had them all. And he did not want to meet with me on Zoom or Teams. I said, okay, well, do you want to call me? You know, do you want to send me your recommendations via email? And he said, no, I want you to come to the Fish House and sit down and discuss it with me. And I said, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm not really comfortable doing that. And then he said, well, you know, I think you should come over to my house and hear what I have to say. And I quite honestly didn't really like the tone and the direction it was going in. So I wasn't able to consult with him as much as I would have liked. I did offer numerous times to meet over Zoom, over Teams, on the phone, via email, and he didn't take me up on any of that. So I think that I'm thinking we might have gotten off on the wrong foot, and I think that's partly because the August meeting, I voiced concerns about the makeup of that committee. I was approached by four existing members of that committee with their own concerns with how things were being handled. I have also spoken to people on other committees that are concerned with the way the chair conducts the committee meetings and various issues that they have. I sat here and listened to the fishermen come and have their say. I went to that meeting and heard them, and I felt like for some reason they weren't being represented. So I thought that I'm proposing reappointing two people that are on the committee and replacing two others that are on the committee with two of the fishermen and an independent person, Amy Linger, who really has no affiliation, to kind of balance out what I feel like is the appearance of a stacked committee. And I think it's important that we try to engage as many new people to get involved and have their voices heard. And I think it was really clear after listening to people at that August meeting that that was not what was happening on Harbor Waterfront. And I think that it's a tough call. You know, I did speak to the two people that I didn't suggest for reappointment. I emailed both of them. I offered to have personal conversations with them. One did not respond to me at all. One said, no need, that's fine. And it's not to say that I don't value their service and the input and the work that they've put in, because it's a lot of work. I can see that they've done a lot of work. But I do think it's important to have committees that represent a wide, diverse cross-section of this town. And I don't feel like this one was made up that way. So I think that, you know, it's something we need to address. And it's not fun, and it's not maybe a popular thing, but I think it's the right thing to do in this case. So that is Harbor Waterfront.
Thank you.
Danielle, I just have a quick follow-up question.
Yeah.
Ms. Jackson had mentioned that one of the folks who did not get reappointed was a prior EPA employee and things of that nature.
Yes.
And when you were evaluating who was up and who should or should not stay on the committee, were those things taken into consideration?
They were. And what also was taken into consideration was our new focus that we prefer people that actually live in town to be on the committee. And this particular person does not. So that was a consideration for me as well. So yeah, I did take that into consideration. It's a very valid point. I could probably make the case for any single one of those 21 people that they all have valuable things that they can contribute.
Right.
But honestly, like, you know, some of them had applied almost 3 years ago. So, I mean, I had two people that didn't even respond to me to talk to me at all, right? So I think, yeah, there are 20-something people, but, you know, some of them, quite honestly, had absolutely no experience, and Harbor Waterfront was one of 5 committees they checked off and didn't even submit a resume. So there were various degrees of qualification, so to speak.
Yep.
And that's not to say that anyone isn't qualified, but I think that board needs a little bit more balance. And I am also really concerned with the fact that we've had the same chair of that board for, I think it's close to 7 years. And I think it says in our charter somewhere that, you know, every 2 years you're supposed to consider a change of the chair, you know. And I think that I don't feel like he's really collaborative, and I think that's important. And I think it's a big, important board in this town, and I think we really need to be a little bit more cognizant of how we're putting people on there.
David?
No, I agree. I think it is a big, important board. You know, I think that the change in the process at the select board level through our change in policy where the liaison was going to work in conjunction with the chair is incredibly important. So I feel uncomfortable accepting any recommendations today. I would ask that you figure out how to collaborate with Mr. Schultz and communicate with him so that way you can work together, because I mean you can say, hey, I tried, but I would expect us as liaisons to not make the selection for the committee, but to work in conjunction and to hear from the chair
I asked for the chair's input many times, David, but I won't be told where I'm going to meet and how I'm going to do it. I won't be told that. That's not his role, and that's not appropriate.
Okay, well, I mean,
I gave him many options, and he declined.
he is a volunteer as well.
So am I. And so am I.
Understood.
And I deserve a certain level of respect, and I didn't get it, and it's not appropriate. That's how I feel.
Yeah.
Okay, so can we have a motion to approve Ted Dooley, Scott McBurney, Amy Linger, Michael Gambale, and John Ingalls?
So I will motion to table this discussion. I motion, I urge the chair of the committee to reach out to their select board liaison. I think this can come up on next week's meeting. I think there's plenty of time, or what do we have, 2 weeks from now? There's plenty of time between now and then to have this conversation. And if we can't have this conversation by then, for whatever reason, we can take it up then.
So I have a comment. I think that's a real slap in the face to Danielle. I think Danielle has done the work. I think she has reached out to the chair. I think for the chair to turn around and not jump on a call when it was viable, not to make room to work halfway, and then to turn around and to say to a select board member, oh, you go back and you work with the chair. I think some of these chairs, I hate to have a chair, including myself as a chair, think that they have this ultimate authority. You're just supposed to work together. And there's a lot of work put into this, making calls, interviewing people, reaching out to people who weren't going to be selected. And I think tonight we should be making a call, and to turn around and ask Danielle, go back and try to work it out again. I have a real problem with that.
Well, if you noted the way I phrased it, I wasn't asking Danielle to do anything affirmatively there. I was asking the chair of the Harbor and Waterfront to reach out and do something.
It is a tough call. I appreciate everyone's perspective here. You know, some people have different ways of like wanting to talk and all that stuff. And you know, I don't fundamentally quibble with any of where you came out on this. I think it's almost like what I'm taking from Katie. Maybe this isn't exactly what you're saying, but it's almost like let's be an even bigger person here. Let's give it like one more try to try to kind of have that conversation. Maybe it's a good thing for everyone, since we're now talking about this, to at least make sure that conversation's had. Maybe there's some useful information that's shared. It's not that you haven't tried. I hear what you've done, and it sounds like there was communication, but it just kind of didn't really sync up, and it does feel as though it is hard to feel great about saying yes when there hasn't even been the conversation. So
I'm happy to have the conversation, but I'm going to tell you right now that I am not going to go back on the fact that I think fishermen need to be on that board.
Agreed.
And I also think that there needs to be diversity in how we put people on committees. And I'm happy to have a conversation with Jackson Schultz, but if he's not going to be collaborative and open to that, the conversation is going to go nowhere. I'm going to be completely honest. I'm not pulling any punches.
Yeah.
I sat at that same meeting that you sat at, Katie, right next to you, and it was clear that we have a problem, right? And I'm happy to be the bad guy to go ahead and approach it. I tried to go about this as best as I could. You know, I gave him a lot of options, but I will not be addressed the way that I was, and I will not be told where I have to meet somebody, especially when I feel like you're trying to use your influence at the fish house in that environment to make me do something that I'm not comfortable with, okay? When I campaigned for the seat, I went to the fish house and I met with a whole lot of people over there that wanted to talk to me and have my ear about certain things, okay? And I gave everybody an open conversation. But I'm not going to be pigeonholed into doing something that makes me uncomfortable or that gives any implication of anything unethical, right? So I'm going to put that out there right now.
I don't think anything in this process that has happened up to now has a reflection on you, Danielle. And
Oh, I
just
don't
wanna
either.
make that very clear. I know Mary Ellen said it feels like a slap in the face. That's not what it intended to feel like. However, Jackson is the chair of a whole committee. That committee.
He probably
has the rep-
shouldn't be, quite honestly.
Okay, but that committee suffers the repercussions of his actions. So
And they
I'm
have voiced
hoping-
that. Committee
I'm
members
hoping-
have voiced that to
I'm
me.
hoping that the membership will voice that now that we've had this discussion publicly.
But who are they, they did voice that to me, Katie. I've spoken to 4 members that have concerns about him. What else are they supposed to do? What do we expect them to do? What else? I am the liaison to the committee.
These are committees, they're not clubs. These are committees.
You
And-
don't need to explain that to me. I
Okay, so,
understand that.
and I think that these are advisory committees to the select board. And if there's been a process, if we have a process, we have a recommendation, I just feel that we should be taking the recommendation of the select board member.
I mean, I do trust the
Is this
4
really
other
gonna
people
change?
sitting here when they make recommendations. I haven't ever sat here and told anybody that they should go back to the drawing board and try again, or maybe, even when I think that other people could be appointed to the committees that are different than what they recommend. I also put it out to this whole board what I was going to do a couple weeks ago, and the only one who had feedback was Doug. Valuable feedback that I certainly took into consideration. But now, when we get here, all of a sudden, it's different, right? So that's what feels disingenuous to me. I'll be completely frank, right? I trust you 4 as adults to go ahead and handle your committees. Mine is a little bit more difficult. This committee, I think Diane said it best to me, that, you know, good luck dealing with Harbor Waterfront, right? Okay, well, I will. But, you know, to say that I haven't gone the distance and done,
And that's exactly what I clarified to say. I was not intending to say. What I think, the part here that I did not consider originally was that the consultation between chair and select board member is a new process,
it is, yeah.
right?
That's-
And it's not exactly perfect yet,
No.
and it needs to be fine-tuned.
Right.
And both select board liaisons and chairs
Mhm.
need to figure out how that process works.
Absolutely.
And I am not saying that there was any malfeasance or any lack of effort in any of the way that was described. And I'm not saying that any of this is going to change by next week. I'm just saying, allow the chair to reflect on the conversation that was had here tonight in the hope that that conversation might change something.
Okay.
And if it doesn't, it doesn't.
Okay, so you made a,
So I had a motion,
you had a motion.
and nobody, so I asked, is there a motion to accept these nominations? So,
And I motion to table.
Mhm.
Motion to
Okay.
next-
And I'll second that. I'll second Katie's motion.
so Katie's made a motion to table. Do we have a vote to table this?
Mhm.
How many ayes to table?
Aye.
Aye.
Danielle?
No.
I'm a no. So that's 3-2, it'll be tabled. That vote is 3-2.
And it should appear on the next meeting,
Please.
please.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Okay, now we are at the minutes. Doug,
Aye, aye,
you're good with the minutes?
sure.
Okay, so can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so that ends our select board meeting.
No select board time?
Oh, geez, sorry. Yes, select board time, I'm so sorry about that. All right, so we'll start with select board time. Danielle?
Oh, yeah, so I just want to say to the school committee, I want to applaud them for their recommendation of Jason Kalishman, and I was able to attend the community conversation with him the other night, as well as the interview that he had with him a week or so ago, and I know it's a tough decision to not go and have a national executive level search, but I do think even if they did open that up, he would be head and shoulders the best candidate. And I think it's to our benefit that he lives here, he's from here. There is no learning curve getting to know the population and the kids, which is on average about 1.5 years for an incoming superintendent from somewhere else. So that is one of the many pluses to him, and I'm really glad that they saw that they have that within, and they were able to, even deal with the feedback that some people aren't happy with it. I understand that, but don't penalize a really good candidate. So I was happy to see that. Very sad to see the passing of Arthur O'Neill, a giant in this community, who spent 35 years coaching soccer, girls basketball, and teaching so much more than X's and O's to so many kids in this town. A real beacon for what a coach, parent, human being should be. And I was so encouraged to see so many people from town attending his services. I will say it made me incredibly proud to be a resident of Swampscott, to see that this community does show up when things like that happen, and that was very encouraging, albeit very sad. And I just want to thank his family for sharing him with us for a number of years, and that's all.
Well said. Doug?
Two things. Financial Summit.
Ooh.
Any updates?
I'll get that to you next week.
Okay, I mean, we said we were going to do this in September, right? I don't quite understand.
I don't have an answer for you tonight. I hear your frustration. We don't have an answer for you tonight.
Okay, would you be able to, we know if the schools have been directly engaged in formulating a plan to have a joint conversation?
Schools have been notified that we don't have a date as of this time.
Is there anything that we can do to be helpful in making this come to fruition? Is the data being prepared? I'm sorry, I'm not saying it's your responsibility. I'm just, you may just be the one that may know more. You've had tri-chair or whatever it is, just to
We haven't had a
make sure
tri-chair. I will look into it for you tomorrow, and I'll email you tomorrow, and I'll bring that back to the board.
I hope it's not just me that's interested, and I just feel like
Thank you.
we made a very significant pledge at town meeting that we were going to have this process, and now we're getting deeper and deeper into when the budget's have to start snapping, and we haven't even started this conversation. So it's just a difficult situation. On hopefully a mostly positive note, most people probably maybe know CPA passed yesterday, and so the next step in that process is that at May town meeting, there will be a bylaw proposed to formulate the Community Preservation Committee. And there are certain required people that have to be on that committee, and we have a choice about some additional people that could also be on that committee. So just so people are aware, that's not going to go into effect until FY '26 tax cycle. So, it's a long process, basically, for all this to come to fruition. That would be the tax implications maybe wouldn't even happen until 2027, and the committee would have to be seated and, actually kind of figuring out what they're going to do and, all that. So it's a long process from here to there.
David?
Nothing tonight.
Katie?
Yes. I would actually like to acknowledge and thank Diane, Mary Ellen, and Mike and Sarah Sweeney for the wonderful contributions to our seaside landscape of the veterans banners that have been hung down.
DPW.
Oh, the DPW for hanging them. I saw them the other day. It was quite a lovely experience to walk down with my kids and find their great-grandfather and a dad, 2 friends of ours who was from town. They posed, they took pictures, they were so excited. It's great to see, to have a place where families can go outside of, you know, a memorial or a cemetery where they can sort of feel connected to their family members who served for our country. So I just want to thank everybody who participated. I think it's a wonderful addition, and I hope that we will continue it.
And Diane is keeping the list for next year.
Excellent.
To add more, so.
If anybody wants to send me the information.
Yeah, maybe we can.
We currently have 400 veterans in town right now.
Amazing.
And, you know, majority of those banners are from our past veterans, so hopefully we'll have this whole town covered.
And I just have a quick follow-up question. Very excited the CPA passed. A lot of work went into that. So I want to acknowledge Doug and David's contributions to that because it was significant. And I just want to find out when the community might be able to submit names to be considered for I know there's a bylaw and the bylaw dictates a lot of it, but can we start that process sooner rather than later to understand interest in who might want to sit on that, to understand how big, because there is a little bit of flexibility about the size of the committee, so maybe understanding what the interest is might help us make a better decision about size. So just wondering sort of that thought process maybe.
I'll consult with the statewide organization
Okay.
that's done this now 200 times to
Yep.
get their input about the kind of the sequencing of things. Does that make
And what's
sense?
the best size committee, too?
What's that?
What's the
Yeah.
best size committee?
Yeah.
Great.
Okay, are you also? All right, so I just want to thank Nate Beisheim, Steve Mastrioni, Aiden Bruno, and Joe Dillette for bringing us the select board meeting tonight. I also want to thank the police department, Swampscott Police Department, and the Marblehead Police Department for assisting with the O'Neill funeral. It was such a large funeral that they had to call in Marblehead support to help as people were leaving. It was very, very impressive. The other thing I want to update, I think relatively soon, we should, as a committee, give our opinions on what we feel about Kings Beach and how to work, what are our priorities. We have a list of priorities from Kleinfelder. I had a meeting this week with Gino, with the mayor of Lynn, with Jenny Armini, and with Brendan Crichton. They asked to meet with us, and Lynn is in the process of applying for a grant that we do not need to approve, but we would be the recipient of a substantial amount of money from a federal grant. I think it's a $20 million grant, you know? It's a $20 million grant. So, and they are discussing the possibility of doing a pilot program of a UV station at the beach. So there are a lot of variables involved in this, and I explained to the mayor that we have a committee, a Water and Sewer Infrastructure Committee, and as soon as they give us an opinion on what's in the best interest of Swampscott, then we can get back to them. So I did speak to the chair of the committee, and Liz Smith, and she and her committee are going to start working on that. The mayor is sending over the grant information, and I can't think of anything else from there. But the big issue here is I just want to make sure that everybody at this board is vocal on what's important to them. So I've heard from Doug a couple times, but I I think it's important that we're upfront about it, okay? So that'll come on a future. And other than that, thank you and good night.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Second.
Diane, second.